How's this for the title of a book? This is what you're really hungry for. 6 simple rules to transform your relationship with food to become your healthiest self. And I think for those who listen to this podcast called Learn from People Who Lived It, that's what we're interested in. We're interested in bettering our situation. We're interested in becoming our best and healthiest self. And today, if you have a relationship that isn't so fantastic with food, I think this is going to be your podcast. Kim Shapira is a celebrity dietitian, nutritional therapist, and author. She's got her bachelor's, she's got her master's. She has been helping people for 25 years. She helps people that you know, she helps people that you don't know, and she contributes to everything from Yahoo to Sky News to Vanity Fair, Pop Sugar, and about 1 million podcasts. She joins Dr. David Lycan and I today to talk about relationships with food. And we are going to learn so many things in this podcast, specifically one little tip that we're going to learn at the very end that I had no idea about surrounding gum and mints. If you experience bloating or gas and you consume gum or mints, stay tuned for this nugget toward the end of today's podcast.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Dave, welcome to the podcast. We have a big guest with us today. And I don't mean big as in tall and wide. I mean, we have a superstar to the superstars on this podcast today. Kim Shapira is a celebrity dietitian, nutritional therapist, and author. She went to Tulane. She went to Boston University. I want to know if she's a hockey fan. I've got a lot of other questions that I'm going to ask her too. But welcome to our podcast today, Kim. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And Dr. David Lycan is right above me as always. Dave, how are you feeling today?
Good, man. Good. It's good to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a really great episode. It's funny to me because as I've started my podcast, and Kim, you have a podcast that you do too, right?
No, just always a guest.
Always a guest. That's such a better gig. Let me tell you how much better that is. But anyways, it's funny to me. And Dave, I wonder if you've picked up on this too. We'll go in like little theme circles for a little while. It's like every now and again, we'll have 2 or 3 guests in a row that are talking about psychedelics, or we'll have 2 or 3 guests in a row that are talking about childhood trauma. And then, but now we're kind of on this skid where we're talking about food and we're talking about, all of the things that are in your world all the time. Have you picked up on that, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. And I was just saying to Dave before we got started, when people go through some really tough stuff, it's easy to turn to drugs and alcohol, but food is another one of those things that a lot of people go to. And so this is a long way of getting to you, Kim, but I want to start with why do you do this work? Did you need it first? Did you need it differently? I mean, why are you here?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to ask that question. And I'm actually super excited that Dr. Dave is here because I also love patterns and love being able to transform people's limitations through those patterns. So I'm super excited to talk about this. But I'm going to share my story as my story and then go from there. So I would always start my story with the fact that I was a sick kid. And in 1986, I got sick and I ended up making medical history and going to the doctor for 5 years in a row, pretty much every Wednesday to see my doctor specialist at UCLA. And it must have been one afternoon when I was 12, and you could picture a shy, quiet girl who was in a lot of pain. I must have been crying in the car. And my mom said to me, "Don't cry. We'll go shopping after your doctor's appointment." And in Westwood, there was a Bullock's, which is kind of like a Bloomingdale's. And so I would basically put my mind towards what I was going to buy instead of being present. And, I seeded a really pretty aggressive shopping addiction, not really knowingly. And since I would tell you I was a sick kid, I had met a doctor mentor of mine in high school who said to me, food can make you sick or healthy. And that was it for me. I was like, that's it. I'm going to be healthy and I'm going to make everyone around me healthy. And I went to college. I studied, exercise science and kinesiology and nutrition, and went to graduate school and studied human metabolism and clinical nutrition. And it was crazy hard. And I decided I was going to open a private practice, and I was going to see my clients privately and establish relationships with these people and make them healthy. And my first client was a therapist. I was 27 years old, and I helped her lose 30 pounds. She got off some of her medications for any metabolic dysregulation, like high cholesterol and high blood pressure. I felt like a superstar. I was doing exactly what I had set out to. And then she said to me, I'm going to gain the weight back. And this triggered everything in me, because this was, of course, about me. And I said, why would you do that? And she said, well, my husband wants to be intimate with me all the time, and I was molested as a child. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about the people living inside of their bodies. I only know what food can make somebody healthy. And as I started recognizing these patterns in my clients, I started recognizing they eat the same way that I shop. And if I can work on myself and I can start helping my own problem, I can start applying that to create more healthy, sustainable results. And so it would be simple things like, I really want to buy that purse I can't afford. Let me put it on hold and walk away and see what happens. And then the emotion would go away, and I would recognize I no longer think about that purse. What just happened? And so I started saying to my clients, start with half of your normal portion, put the other half on hold, let that leptin in your stomach kind of signal to your brain that you've had enough food, and come back in 15 minutes and see what happens. And they started saying they were satisfied. They were full. And of course, we know that when we go to a restaurant and we're starving and we eat a piece of bread and we wait 10 minutes for our food to arrive, we're no longer hungry. And so I just started working on myself and then applying that to my clients, using everything I knew from science, but also adding some spiritual psychology, some neuroscience, some quantum physics, some astrology, really putting it all in to kind of get to where I am.
Maybe I come to you, Dave, and ask you about that. Is there a correlation to why she wouldn't be able to keep the weight off? Is there something that you know about that's happening up here?
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about it logically, losing weight should be a matter of accounting, right? So if you're taking in less calories, or if you're taking in less calories than you're burning, you should be losing weight, right? And if it was that easy, people would be able to lose weight and keep it off with no problem. So there's obviously a psychological component to it. There's a drive component to it that keeps people in these cycles where they're not able to modify the behavior in a permanent way or in a long-lasting way to keep the results. And your client had mentioned about sexual abuse as a child. That's a big one from my experience working with people over the years. Sexual abuse in a lot of cases can lead to obesity, and there's a bunch of different reasons for that.
You've seen that before, Kim?
Yeah. I mean, what he's referring to, in my opinion, is I want to protect myself. So, I need to make myself, I need an exterior wall to protect myself. But our rational mind knows that food is fuel. It's our irrational mind that knows that food is the enemy. It's also comfort. It's also entertainment. And so once we can recognize I've been emotionally triggered and now I think food is something other than fuel, it's a sign that I'm not okay, right? There's this first chance that we can come in and help ground ourselves. But every single one of us develops between 3 and 5 emotional triggers in the first 7 years of our life. And then when we go through something traumatizing, we experience and develop new triggers for us to master during the rest of our life, right? So it's never going to end we're all affected by 9/11. We're all affected by COVID. It looks different for every one of us. Some of us couldn't wait to get out of the house. Some of us couldn't wait to stay in the house, right? Every one of us affected differently. And nobody has the same perspective. And so it's really like, how fast can I be resilient and recognize that food is fuel?
Dave, from your perspective, and then you're going to go, Kim, and talk about this, but like, how can you shake that up? How can you overcome that?
Yeah. And I'm always very cautious when I talk about this, because I don't want it to come across as you kind of blaming the victim sort of thing, but things usually happen on multiple levels at the same time. And so there is comfort in eating. There's an immediate satisfaction in eating, especially eating something that you enjoy. And there can be a little bit of a dopamine bump, when you eat something that you find personally satisfying, right? But then there's these other levels where, if you're coming off of a trauma, gaining a lot of weight and making yourself large and imposing, right? So, when you encounter a bear, what do they tell you? Make yourself look big and back away, right? Puff up your jacket, or, make yourself look large in some way. So subconsciously there's this piece of, if I had been attacked before, maybe I can protect myself by making myself, look bigger and look more imposing, or make myself unappealing in some way to not be victimized again. Right. And again, I say this, cautiously, because I don't want it to come across as blaming. This goes on behind the scenes. You're not aware of it, but it's definitely a factor. If you can't get to the point of acknowledging that, it's going to be very hard to lose weight and keep it off, because you're fighting against yourself. There are elements inside of your own mind unconsciously that are pushing you toward keeping this in place.
I think coming to this place of acceptance is the key to a lot of things, right? Like, we are not going to like all the moments we're in. We're just not. We're not going to like all the seasons. We're not going to like all the moments, but we have to accept that I'm in this moment. And once I can accept I'm in this moment, then I can actually start moving forward, right? But our mind is giving us 60,000 thoughts a day in response to what we see, smell, feel, hear, and touch. Its job is to help us survive every single moment in the most pleasurable way. We're not taking credit for our heartbeats, our lung breathing, but we are thinking, oh my God, why is my mind working this way? It's doing its job on purpose to keep you safe. And like, I have the perfect example of this. Like, this mom was telling me this story of her son. They were in the kitchen. They had just finished lunch, and he walked out of the room and he came back a second later, and she said, what are you doing? You have your math tutor. And he said, I know, but I need to grab a snack. And she said, you just had lunch. And he said, I know, I need something fun in my mouth. And it's like, we want to survive every moment in the most pleasurable way. And sometimes our mind is a liar, because we really can survive in discomfort. We just have to remember that we're safe.
Dave was literally saying that, I think, in the last podcast that we recorded. This is what I'm talking about. Like, these themes keep showing up for us. And you were talking about fasting, and you were talking about intermittent fasting, I believe, Dave. And you were saying something about, like, just push through the mild discomfort and a little, and you can then see what's in store for you. Can we go back to the word triggers? Because that's really the thing that keeps getting people stuck and tripped up. What I've found in my experience over the last couple of years of just interviewing people and presenting is that the first step to any ounce of fixing anything is to become aware of it. Is to become aware that, like, oh, there's things that are triggering my response to this. And so, Kim, I want to ask you how you help people identify those triggers. How do you help people? And then Dave, maybe you can follow up with it, but like, how do we help the unaware become aware?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm curious, Dr. Dave, how you feel about this, but I personally, again, kind of like, here we are in this moment, and we don't necessarily have to know where it's coming from or why we feel this way, but we kind of have to accept that we do. And so that's what I'm asking you to recognize. And so one thing that I ask my clients to do, and I use 6 simple rules to kind of educate my clients, but before we can even talk about rule number 1, they have to know where their mind is. And so one simple thing I ask my clients to do is to say, like, to repeat after me, where is my body? And then to repeat, it's right here. And then to say, where is my mind? And people need to go and find their mind, and they have the ability to. Like right now, we can all say, like, do you have to pee? We don't know where our bladder is, but we know where it is, and we know how it's feeling. So we have the ability to find our mind. And what's really interesting is that sometimes our mind is on what we're going to have for dinner next Thursday, or a conversation I had last week. And anytime your mind is somewhere other than here, you need to repeat it. So you can be very grounded in your body. And like one example that I use is to think every single time you think about food, which is on average 221 times a day, think of it as an alarm. Yep. Think of it as an alarm. Every time you think of food, it's an alarm. And if any one of us had an alarm going off in our house right now, we would stop this conversation because it would take a priority. We would go turn it off. We would scan our environment. We would make sure we're safe. And then we would come back to the conversation. And so sometimes when we're looking for pleasure, and in the past we used food or shopping or drugs or sex or whatever it is, our mind is going to remember, that's how I dealt with this discomfort. So now our mind is saying, food's a great idea. That's an alarm. Let me turn it off, scan my body, see why I had that thought. Is it because I'm hungry? Is it because I'm bored? Is it because my chest is tight? Is it because the food is in front of me? Right? We have to be able to identify why the alarm went off, but also just to accept that it did. We don't need to get into a whole song and dance about, well, when I was 4, this happened. I mean, maybe we do, but that's not what I think you need to do in this moment. What I think you need to do in this moment is accept this is how I feel. My mind is going like, wants to protect me. And my job is to bring my mind back to this moment to remind it it's totally safe. In this moment, I'm safe.
Man, we got the real one here today, Dr. Dave. Follow up on that. I love that.
Well, and then also once you've identified what the alarm is, you've checked in with yourself, you know that you're safe. If the alarm goes off again in 15 minutes, you can quickly say, I just looked at that and nothing has significantly changed. Let me just put that aside and get back to what I was doing. Right. And then as you practice that, you become better and better at putting off that alarm until it makes sense to really address it. Right. So if you're feeling like, oh, hey, I want to go eat something, well, there'll be a time to sit down and have a meal. And you may have that predetermined, like, oh, I'm planning on, eating at 12:30 or something like that. If it's only 10 and you just had breakfast already, at 9, and, there are things that are going on that you feel are causing anxiety for you and your impulses to eat, once you've checked in with that alarm, you can become more practiced at putting it off. And I think another piece of this too is culturally right now, we're mostly all conditioned to avoid discomfort, right? So even just the idea of talking about, hey, something triggered me. Yes, something gave you an unpleasant emotional reaction. Okay. That doesn't mean that you have to have a specific prescribed response. You just need to acknowledge that that's happening, right? And then the response to it is something that you can step back from and say, how do I want to address this? And what makes the most sense to address it? And so I think we get caught up in these situations where we get triggered by something. We have an automatic reaction that's become conditioned over time, and we don't question it. We don't stop and pause and take inventory of where we are. We just automatically react to it, however that is, however we're programmed to do that. You can't make any lasting change until you tackle that big thing.
You guys, you know how big this is, what we're talking about. And what's crazy is the three of us talk about this stuff all the time. And so it kind of becomes the stuff that we say most days in our lives. But we all three know, really, this is how you overcome just about anything. Like, folks that are listening to us right now, we're not just talking about food. Like, what this thing that we've been kicking around for the last 10 minutes applies to drugs, alcohol, sex, masturbation, shopping, gambling. Like, it applies to just about any addiction that we would seek to make ourselves feel better in moments. And
not only negative things, but also positive things. Sure. If you want to accomplish a new skill, you're going to feel really uncomfortable the first couple times that you try it. You're going to suck at it. You're not going to be good at that new thing until you get going with it. So learning how to tolerate discomfort is probably one of the biggest steps toward mastering most of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're hanging out with Kim Shapira. I'm going to put this right up over all of us right now. It's called This Is Really What You're Hungry For: 6 Simple Rules to Transform Your Relationship with Food to Become Your Healthiest Self. You mentioned just a minute ago, Kim, that you said, I have 6 tips, and kind of ground zero is where's your body? Where's your mind? So then how do you build on that? Like, what is the first step for most people?
Yeah, it's really, again, it's once their mind is in their body, that's when they can move forward, right? And so it's actually asking yourself, like, how hungry am I? Taking your normal portion, cutting it in half, and waiting 15 minutes to see if you need more food. So people don't pay attention to their appetite. They think it's 12:30, it's time for lunch, without even questioning, am I hungry for lunch? And so our body gives us all these sensations all day long, and it's really up to us to be able to interpret them. And we should be eating when we're physically hungry, and only as much as we need, trusting we're going to be able to have more the next time we feel hungry. And that's the scary piece, is the trusting I'll have more. And especially with all the noise in the world and all the diet mentality and diet thoughts, is that people don't feel safe. Especially, I was talking to a client earlier who has been restricting her entire life, and she's a 40-year-old woman. So when you think about it, how unsafe she really feels, because she doesn't know when her next meal is coming, because she doesn't allow herself to eat in a safe environment when she's physically hungry.
Yeah.
Right? So it takes a lot to be able to eat when you're hungry. Start with half. People think immediately, I'm not going to have enough. They don't know. You're not even getting curious. How do you know you're going to need more? You've been overeating this whole time. It's right there if you need more.
That's so, people are so lucky that get to work with you. Because you're breaking it down in a way that's so easy to understand. Dave, do you want to follow up on that thought?
Yeah, I guess this is like partially a comment and partially a question. Your body is going to adapt to whatever it is that you're doing. And if you starve yourself, your body's going to slow your metabolism down and go into starvation mode and start restricting the use of calories. So what had been common ideas for losing weight, I think, are actually counterproductive. Is that your experience with actual clients as well? And how do you address that in terms of how you approach food with people?
Yeah. I like to really simplify everything, right? So again, back to the physical sensations. If we undereat, we're actually giving the message that we're in a famine. If we overeat, we're actually giving the message that we're storing for winter. And so our body really thrives in consistency, right? We all have poop schedules. We all have sleep schedules. And when we screw this up, it creates inflammation, right? And if we restrict, then we're basically telling our body to hold on. We can't lose weight in that environment. And if we overeat, our body is basically saying, I need this, I need to store this because winter's coming. Mm-hmm. Right? So just to really simplify, like, our metabolism can be, like, I think you said a couple minutes ago, we can change our metabolism instantly. Our bodies are like self-healing. They're self-resilient. They do things all by themselves. So even if have a high body fat and you don't get very hungry, just by starting with half of your normal portion and waiting 15 minutes, you're going to actually make your metabolism go faster.
What do you think is the goal for most people who, struggle with food and weight loss and diet? And is their goal to, are they striving for one thing typically? Like, they just want to be healthy, or do they just want to be skinny, or do they just is there something that you find most people who have a little bit of a tough relationship with food reach?
Really good question. Really good question. So the title of my book is called This Is What You're Really Hungry For.
Yes.
What do you think the answer is?
I think it's probably to feel good in your body.
Yeah.
I would say love and acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say peace around your well-being.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you were to ask all my clients what their goal is, the first time they were going to answer that, they would say to lose weight. And then I would say, no, that's not your goal. Your goal is to learn how to keep the weight off, right? We have to change. We can't stay the same. And I think the whole world thinks about, I want to lose weight. And that's why we're failing.
Now people are aware of where they are. They're in their body. They're in their minds. They've gotten to this point where, okay, I'm starting to work with my portions and I'm only having half. And that 15-minute thing has been pretty helpful. How do we build on that?
Yeah. So rule number 2 is to eat what you love, with the caveat that the food has to love you back.
That's so good. Dave, you're done, man. She found you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Me too.
What are you guys thinking? What's happening right now?
I just think it's so funny because we crap that, like last night, I'm really dialed in on my diet. I know exactly what my body loves. I've had a couple of food sensitivity tests and some blood work and, some gut issues along the way where I've been kind of forced to figure it out.
Yeah.
But now that I know what it is, like it's actually so easy for me. And like, you talked about it earlier and it's how I operate. Like food is just fuel to me. I eat because it's the thing I'm supposed to do. I put what I know my body likes into my body. But last night was my son's 18th birthday. And we went to a restaurant and there were a couple of things that I put in my mouth last night that my body does not love me back for,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking
But I
about.
would call that normal eating.
You would? Okay.
Yeah. And, a couple of my clients said to me recently, they didn't like that term normal, which I've been using for like 28 years. They liked neutral eating. That's been neutral eating, right? Like that's going to happen. We're going to have birthdays. We're going to have birthday cake. We're going to have things, and that's okay. Right? Just get right back to being consistent and your body knows how to handle that.
Okay. How do you help people, or what's your advice rather for people to find out what their body does love? Because that's a really, really cool and important step.
Yeah. So we go through it, right? Like, do you get headaches? Do you clear your throat? Do you get heartburn? Do you burp? Does your stomach make noises? Are you nauseous? Do you get gas? Does it smell? Is it airy? Are you constipated? Do you have diarrhea? What does your poop look like? Do you have psoriasis, eczema, joint pain? Are you fatigued? What other symptoms do you have? And then they're like, I love this food. I love this. And I was like, that's so interesting. I wonder if that food could be making you sick. Let's just experiment with that. So try it out, see how you feel, right? And then we also do food sensitivities. But the entire time I'm also educating them on, are you chewing your food? Are you eating slower than you should be? Are you smelling your food? Are you actually getting digestive enzymes in your mouth through your saliva? And chewing your food enough that it's breaking down, because that's our only mechanical breakdown that happens is in our mouth. And sometimes we don't chew our food and we're swallowing whole pieces. And that's what causes digestive problems. I'm listening to them and I hear them use the word like, I ate crap. This is junk. This is good, bad, healthy, unhealthy. I shouldn't eat. We should be thinking food is food, and we should not be labeling our food as anything other than food. Why would you eat junk? Why would you eat crap? Why would you eat foods you shouldn't be eating? Why are you saying these things?
Isn't there also there seems to me there's a lot of value in actually calling it what it is, because when you name things, it's usually a little bit easier to, kind of work on them. Like if you say, if you have to admit that you just ate an entire pie, that has a very different, to me, that feels different than I ate some junk food or I ate some crap food, right? But if I have to say I ate pie, but then conversely, I ate a salad or I ate some really healthy pasta, if you're naming the foods you're eating, wouldn't that have a pretty good impact?
I mean, why name it? Because Dr. Dave, how do you feel about this? Because I've had 28 years of experience with clients who come through so much trauma around food. Uh-huh. And, it's really interesting. Kids who have eating disorders, in my opinion, it really is these projections that they get from their parents and the way that they eat. So back to this idea of a snake, which we were talking about earlier, before we even pressed record, is this idea that I'm afraid of snakes. I don't know how I became afraid of snakes, but I innately am terrified of them. And I was told that actually snakes are so afraid of us that they vibrate a projection that we internalize as our own. And so if we're labeling food or talking about this food makes me fat, or do I look fat? Is this food good or bad? The children that are hearing this, they're taking it on as their own. And there's so much confusion of what is theirs and what is someone else's. And we have to be so careful. Why can't we just call cake, cake? Why can't we call food, food? Like we're saying dessert or treats. It's cheesecake, let's say. Are you hungry for cheesecake after you just had a hamburger? Only because it's a treat and I don't know when I'm going to get it again is why I'm going to have it. But if I'm allowed to have it and it's just food, then I can honor what my body needs, trusting it's an anytime food.
All right, Dave, take it over. Run with the ball.
I don't have a problem labeling highly processed food junk. So if something has low nutritional value, we probably shouldn't be consuming it one way or the other, because it's going to cause all kinds of problems in terms of inflammation and making you not feel good and all that. But to your other point, though, about goodies, things that we like, a good piece of cheesecake, I'm all about it. But you should be able to stop and enjoy it for what it is and not feel guilty about enjoying it, and slow down and taste it and be present as you're eating it, and not just inhaling the piece of cake, but actually pause and let it rest in your mouth for a little bit and enjoy the taste of it as you're eating it and making it a full experience. And if you can do that without feeling guilt about it, you're not going to get caught up in these shame cycles where every time you eat something, then you feel bad about it. And then what do you want to do? You want to punish yourself, by doing things that are unhealthy. So, if you enjoy something, you should do it, but try to find some moderation to it.
Yeah. The problem is that people have shame. And the idea that's dangerous because that creates stress. And our body responds to stress in under 10 seconds, tipping off 1,400 different physical sensations that are hard to recover from, that tip off the hippocampus, the pituitary gland. They burn out our adrenals. They spike our cortisol. They cause insulin problems. They change our sex hormones, right? So what's happening is if we don't label food as processed, right? Because the truth is every single thing we're eating is processed in one way or another. And there's different levels of processed, but if my body is actually the healthiest it can be, which means I don't have any of those GI symptoms, I don't feel sick, I am a normal body fat, my hydration status is great, then all those noxious chemicals that are created through different foods, my body can just get rid of. It's when I have a lot of inflammation because I have a lot of stress, and it's because I'm ashamed of the food I eat, or it's because I'm not sleeping well, right? Or it's because I don't want to eat the vegetables, or I'm going to eat the vegetables because I want to be good, but I'm also going to eat the cheesecake because that's what I really, really want. And I don't know the next time I'm going to get it. So in order to really, really heal, I was at the airport on Monday at a 7-hour delay. It was a crazy day. There was so much involved in that day. And so at 2:00, I had a bean burrito. Okay. Happy to have that at JFK. Then 5 hours later, I was still at the airport and the only thing I could find was pizza. I ended up taking a piece of pizza, sitting down, and I started talking to this gentleman because, when you're delayed and you change planes, you become best friends with everyone at the airport.
Right.
And he was like, I can't believe you're eating processed food. And I'm like, are you not drinking water out of a bottle? Do I not see a bar in your hand? Why would you say that? You don't need to tell me. This pizza is also giving me lycopene and lutein, and I'm going to get a little protein, and this is my best option. And as long as I get back to how I eat normally, this is a non-issue.
Right.
Wow. That's brave to just of course you were in New York for that guy just to throw that out.
Right. But you have a buffer where you can afford to diverge from time to time and still be able to snap back.
I think we all can. I think that's the goal of healing your relationship with food, loving yourself so much. Like, of course, my trigger is I want to be well. I don't want to eat things that make me sick. Not everybody has that same trigger. And, Matthew, you've gotten to a place where you're like, I see it. Some people, they literally have no idea that the food they're eating is affecting them. They have no idea that chewing gum is causing gas or bloating. And yet they still won't stop eating or chewing the gum. And they don't want to be bloated or have gas. They're complaining. They're going to GI doctors.
Wait a second. Hold on. This might be the first time I'm hearing this.
What?
I'm not joking. I know a lot about a little or a little about a lot. And I have never heard that statistic before. And I do love some gum. But I do notice that it does produce what you just talked about, a little gas. That's a thing?
Yeah, that's a sugar alcohol.
What the frick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then,
right.
People who are addicted to gum or love it so much, they're not giving it up. And yet they're still complaining.
I thought it was the coffee. Maybe it's the gum. Damn, man.
It's for
what
sure
are you doing to me, Kim?
It's for sure the gum.
You think?
Now you know. What are you going to do with that? You're the hero in the story. What are you going to do about that?
The gum is done.
It has to be done.
Can I switch to mints? Can I switch to a mint?
Absolutely not.
No.
Mints have sugar alcohols too, and a lot of them do.
Yeah.
What about what do you what do you do?
We're gonna have to go Freudian on you here and talk about your oral fixations.
Do it.
Oh my
Do it.
God. Oh, yeah. Let's dive in. I want to know too. I'm interested to get to the root of this thing. I don't want to be burdened anymore by my bloated gum chewing situation. That's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
what
true.
other kind of
But
what other
think,
information are you holding on to that we could be learning today?
Who knows? Just keep asking questions. It's all here.
But I think stopping to look for patterns with this is important. Like, if you feel miserable after eating, what is it that you just ate, and see if you can find some kind of pattern to it.
Yeah,
right?
but this is the interesting thing about our body is that, let's say I'm sensitive to chicken. It might not show up 4 to 7 hours until after I've eaten it. And it could affect me up to 3 days.
That's right. And I'll tell you, I have a really tricky one. And I'm just going to say this since we're talking about food anyways, because it's fascinating how we discovered this through a naturopath of mine, Dave. Get this. Turns out, Kim, get this. Turns out that if I eat potatoes and then I eat some sort of a grain within an 8-hour window of each other, I get really bloated and I get super gassy. There's something about the way that the potato and the grains go together for me that doesn't work. When I discovered that and I started separating the two things, like for example, in the morning, I would have maybe some potatoes with my breakfast, but then I would have a taco for lunch or something like that. So I'm mixing the potato and the grain within 8 hours. When I figured that part out, my body was like I instantly lost what I just considered to be some puffy weight, and the bloating disappeared, the stomach agitation disappeared, all of the things that were there, they just were gone. And so I know that's such a specific thing to toss out on this podcast, but that's kind of your point. It's you never know what it is. It could be the weirdest little combination of things.
Yeah. I'm curious if that was the potatoes or the tortilla.
I have cut out potatoes almost exclusively out of my diet. I can still eat them. I just can't eat them really close to the grain. So,
and were they on your sensitivity list?
Yeah, that's what the naturopath discovered. Yeah.
So, and then were other grains on your sensitivity list?
Yeah, it was like a whole list. It was there was a few things, right?
So, those are not permanent. They're meant to come back in.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. And you do a few things to heal your gut, right? Can I give you a little science lesson?
Let's go. Are you kidding me? This is why we're here. I love this.
Okay. So when you think about your digestive tract from your mouth to your anus, it's the width of a tennis court.
Okay.
And so think about
the width of a what?
Tennis court.
From my mouth to my butt.
and every single inch of it has a job.
Okay.
And food should travel down about 1 millimeter an hour, giving you a 24-hour transit time.
Okay.
So we want a 24-hour transit time. So the inner layer, so think about paper towel ring, that cardboard ring. So the inside, that's the inside of your digestive tract, which is actually the outside of your body. So technically what's inside is outside. Nothing has entered your bloodstream yet. Okay. And so you chew your food really well. It mixes with your digestive enzymes. It drops down. It takes 15 minutes. It sits in your stomach for 2 to 5 hours. It mixes with all the acid and it breaks it down. Okay. We have that cardboard, that thin cardboard. It's made up of 3 layers: the mucosal layer, then these tight junctions, and then this epithelial carpet. The epithelial carpet is what releases everything into your bloodstream. When we are sensitive to food, it's because our mucosal layer has been damaged. And this could happen from antibiotics, from stress, from lifestyle, just from not chewing your food properly. And then what happens to that mucosal layer is that it creates these inflammatory responses when you eat these foods you're sensitive to. And it makes these tight junctions loose. So what's inside your digestive tract now is able to go to that epithelial carpet and do some damage to create like mood disorders or diseases. So if we just kind of really heal that mucosal lining, then we won't be affected by, let's say, processed foods or chemicals or things like that. And so the way that we heal that is through a few things. We want to make sure that we're adding omega-3s to our diet. And you could do that through fatty fishes or chia seed, flax seed, or hemp seeds. You want to diversify your fruits and vegetables and have between like 4 and 7 servings every single day. You want to eat some fermented foods. You want to have a probiotic, and you want to make sure you're eating whole grains that have fiber. So a woman needs 25 grams of fiber and a man needs 30 grams of fiber. And we're not eating enough fiber as just an American culture. And so all those things heal the mucosal layer. So we should not be affected by the foods we're eating. And, fruits and vegetables, they make that epithelial carpet very slippery. And it's when it's sticky, that's when it's a problem. So the more fruits and vegetables we eat, the healthier our body is, because it creates these chemicals that make it slippery so things can't stick.
Can I ask you a question quick?
Yeah.
You talk about 4 to 7 servings of veggies a day.
Half cup servings.
Like how does somebody make that happen? It just seems like so much. Like I don't eat that many times a day, I don't think.
Yeah. So a serving is a half cup.
Okay.
So I don't have it in front of me right now, but in general, every morning I take a bowl and I fill it with all the vegetables I have in my refrigerator. So it could be radishes, cucumbers, carrots, spinach leaves, romaine leaves, kale leaves, whatever vegetables, snap peas. And I just make a bowl and I snack on it throughout the day. It ends up being probably about 2.5 cups. Okay. And then I add vegetables to my lunch and I add vegetables to my dinner. I do not love fruit. I sometimes will eat fruit, but I mostly don't.
Eat fruit. Kim, I don't eat fruit either.
So weird. So funny. But I love potatoes.
I do too. That's what pisses me off about my situation.
But you're going to get them
I would
back.
like to eat them more. Well, I think I'm going to get them back.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right.
I love potatoes, and potatoes do not love me back.
Oh no.
If I have hash browns or something like that for breakfast, it is like getting shot national or Mutual of Omaha style with a tranquilizer dart, and I am down.
Oh, wow.
I get so tired after.
Yeah. Okay. So you need to make sure you're adding all these things to your diet. Yeah. Because these are not allergies. So allergies are hives, anaphylactic shock. They're life-threatening. They don't ever go away. They get worse as we get older. These are sensitivities. They're basically an opportunity to heal your gut.
I love that you said that. What an opportunity to heal your gut. You're right. But you did say that a lot of things can contribute to this tough gut system. But I'll tell you, stress has got to be number 1 on the list.
Yeah. And who isn't stressed right now?
Right. But don't you think, and here's something that I've been hearing a lot more of, and I really like this idea. Like everybody's like, try to live a stress-free life, and here's how you manage stress, and all that stuff is really good, and I'm a big believer in it. But I think we could start putting more emphasis on recovery and like because you can't be stress free.
We need stress, actually.
And yeah, of course,
motivate
right? Like there's good parts of it, but like we don't spend enough time recovering. And that's at least a message that I think we could get louder on. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
it is about resilience. It is about how fast we can recover from this fight or flight. And, when you think about grieving, there's 7 stages, depending on who you're talking to about grieving. And we could all be grieving different parts of our lives at different times. And that means we're all in various stages. And that can be stressful. Being hungry is stressful. Not, eating too much is stressful. Not getting enough sleep, getting too much sleep, drinking too much water, taking the wrong supplements. These are stresses, right? What I'm imagining is going to happen next week is stressful. When I am scared that I'm walking past somebody who is perceiving, causing me to perceive fear is stressful. I could have physical problems in my body. That's stressful. So stress is in a lot of different forms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. As we start to wind down, one of the things I'm thinking about is there's been so much good information. This almost feels like, and I don't think I've said this, but maybe 2 or 3 times over the last few years, this feels like one you need to go back and listen to and kind of take notes as you're going along. If you're serious about making some changes in your life, you have given us some great information today, Dave, as always, man, like some great information here today. But one of the things that I get worried about is like paralyzation by information. And there's so much like you should do this and 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 you should do this. So how can you simplify that message for our audience, Kim, as we kind of wind down today?
Oh, tough one. I think
I saved the hard questions for last.
Yeah. A lot of people talk about willpower.
Yeah.
And I think we need to put a big X on that. And I think we need to focus on inner power. I think we need to focus on shutting down what everyone else is doing and coming just to your own body and recognizing how you feel and what you need and operating from that place. So if your friend did great on the celery juice diet or intermittent fasting, that's noise. What does your body need? Obviously neither one of you can have potatoes right now, but focusing on that. And so if potatoes are the only option, recognizing you need to be prepared and bring food with you, right? But I think it's coming to a place of loving your body, trusting that you have everything you need inside of you to handle the moment you're in.
Love it. Dave, any parting thoughts from you?
Well, that acceptance piece is important, because if you're stressing about looking at everything externally, you're never going to find inner peace. If everything external is what's driving your decisions and your behavior, you can't find peace with that, because the external environment is always going to be changing. So I think starting with, taking that time to think about, what is it that my body needs and where am I emotionally right now, and kind of developing that sense of internal reflection and kind of looking at where things are, that's the start to it. Because you'll find peace sooner there, and then you can start to tune out all the external noise that gets in the way of things.
Seems like good advice to me. I don't know a lot about this subject, Kim, and so I just want to say, as I wind down, like I really appreciate you being patient with me. I don't always ask. At least it's an insecurity of mine almost, but I don't feel like I ask the best questions when I'm in this diet and food space, because I just don't know that much about it. And so this is my way of saying thank you for being a little bit patient with me as I sift through some of this stuff.
You did great.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm going to put the book up one more time for everybody. This is really what you're hungry for. I love the title of it. And Kim is in Los Angeles joining us today. How can we find you? Like if somebody has heard enough and they're like, that has got to be my coach. Where do you want to send them?
They can find me on all social sites at Kim Shapira Method. So all of them at Kim Shapira Method.
That's great. That's great. Dave, thank you so much for being with us today and helping us understand these things from your perspective too.
It's a pleasure as always, man.
All right. Kim, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church. anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It, wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word, Learn from People Who Lived It.